But we have the great dome of heaven moving upon the earth. We also have the pyramid as the house of a mysterious elevation, the four square of the base, from which rises the pyramidal form, consisting of four triangles, each with three sides, which make 12 lines or 12 angles, which represent the zodiac. The building was oriented to the 11th decimal point and was probably perfect at one time, but there is damage to one wall of it as a result of an earthquake. I never was quite strong enough and physical enough to climb the outside of the pyramid. Very few people are. It is really an arduous job. You have to have about 4 daggermen or natives to help you. 2 would go in front, scrambled up one of the blocks, which is about 4 feet, and pull. The other 2 are behind and push, and you will gradually elevate it level by level over the hundreds of levels that lead to the top. This is a little too much for the average person, especially in the desert where the temperature is apt to be well over 100. But I did go through all of the interior rooms, the king's chamber and the queen's chamber, and as far as we could get in the grand passageways leading downward. One thing was very evident, and has been discovered, and that is that the inside of the pyramid, the temperature, is the mean temperature of the earth. For the average person, it is colder than Christmas. It is a constant chill, and it is a dead chill. There is no modifying circumstance. And many persons who come out of the pyramid into the heat of the sun have very serious colds and occasionally pneumonia. But this peculiar deadness inside was probably put there or achieved for a purpose. It was probably in this deadness that the transcendent or suspension of life in the ceremony of the coming forth by day was performed. The individual was in the tomb. He was attended by the priests. He was dead. And like the prodigal son, whose father said, "My son was dead, but he is alive again." Humanity was the prodigal son. There were 2 ways of growing in this world. One was to grow slowly by cause and effect and by the labors of living. The world itself became a great temple in which initiation took place over a period of hundreds of lives. But to the ancients there was a wise man's way, and this wise man's way was to pass through by conscious intent and by purification the mystery of the whole cycle in one embodiment. There is an account that Thomas Taylor is said to have found in the records of the British Museum, although no proof is available of it. It is interesting, at least. Namely, that Plato was initiated in the Great Pyramid. And it was there that he received his own final enlightenment. But this presents another problem. If he was initiated in the Great Pyramid in the 4th century BC, how did he get in? All those capstones were in place. Everything was closed. The answer would appear to be that there must be other entrances. There must be some other way of getting into the building. When Mamun, the Caliph of Baghdad, was fuddling with the pyramid, trying to get into it, it occurred to him that his native followers would probably be pretty unhappy and might very well turn against him when they found there were no treasures in there to reward them for their efforts, because when they got in there, the building was empty. There was no mummy, there was no body of a previous pharaoh, although the walls had not been disturbed. And that makes it seem very unlikely that it was a tomb, primarily. Did the initiation ceremony take place when the person was voluntarily out of the physical body? The ancient priests were able to function out of the body. This there can be no reasonable doubt. And it is also mentioned in a number of early Christian reports. Namely, that it was that it was possible for the invisible bodies of the individual to be separated from the visible without a loss of consciousness or a loss of intelligence, and that the invisible body could travel to distant places and could have various experiences. And many people believe this is a comparatively common happening in sleep, that the individual is not actually asleep spiritually, only physically, and that the superphysical vehicles are just as busy while he's asleep as when he is awake. But regardless of this particular point, it is possible that the initiations of the pyramid were given while the candidate was out of the physical body. If so, then there would be no problem of the difficulty of getting into the building. The superphysical vehicles could go through very easily.
You may wonder where all this is going, but it becomes clear when you understand that the Egyptians inherited the religion of Babylon. So are we to presume that this single phase of ceremonial magic constituted the entire repertoire of the Egyptian Almadages? You see, if they could manifest such surprising power, is it not probable that they possessed a knowledge of other natural hidden forces, forces as yet unknown to the modern public world, which is possibly of inestimable value, which may still be contained within what is called the secrets of the ages, which is guarded by the modern mystery school, which is still the ancient mystery school brought forward through the ages? We are assured in the authorized version, and note I say authorized version of Holy Writ, that the magicians of Egypt changed their staves or rods into serpents in the presence of Pharaoh. The modern scientist does not live who can duplicate that phenomena, yet if he happens to be a good Christian, he is in somewhat of a dilemma. We can pass over all the desperate efforts to disprove the magical powers of the Egyptians as arising not from a mature knowledge, but from a desperate prejudice. You see, magic is too ancient and too universal to be explained away by mirrors, wires, and hinges. In Egypt, we are dealing unquestionably with true manifestations of occult power. The learned author of Art Magic presents what may be accepted as a reasonable, accurate estimation of the priest-magicians of the old Egyptian mysteries. Quote, "They were highly educated, scientific men. They understood the nature of the lodestone, the virtues of mineral and animal magnetism, which together with the force of psychological impression constituted a large portion of their theurgic practices. They perfectly understood the art of reading the innermost secrets of the soul, of impressing the susceptible imagination by enchantment and fascination, of sending their own spirits forth from the body, which many modern metaphysical teachers claim that they can do, as clairvoyants under the action of powerful will. In fact, they were masters of the art now known as mesmerism, clairvoyance, electrobiology, etc. They also realized the virtues of magnets, gums, herbs, drugs, and fumigations, and employed music to admirable effect. And no one since has been able to perfect or even come close to their art of embalming the dead." A highly gifted Egyptologist, Lenormant, acknowledges Egyptian magic as an essential part of their religious philosophy. James Bonwick, FRGS, thus summarizes the powers possessed by Egyptian adepts. Quote, "Egyptian mystics could levitate, walk the air, handle fire, live underwater, sustain great pressure, harmlessly suffer mutilation, read the past, foretell the future, make themselves invisible, and cure disease." Unquote. It would seem, folks, that the age of miracles, or at least magic, is not dead. You know, Plato, I wrote this in my book, was an initiate. of Mystery Babylon, and was actually initiated in the Great Pyramid in Egypt, where he lay in the sarcophagus for 3 days and 3 nights. He entered as a mortal man, and according to his writings, emerged as a god, given or imparted knowledge which he was to guard and keep. Remember, they called themselves the guardians of the secrets of the ages. From the writings of Proclus and Iamblichus, we can gain a considerable insight into the principles of Egyptian magic. To the old philosophers, even Pythagoras and Plato, magic was no mystery. According to Proclus, the initiated priests so fully understood the mutual sympathy between the visible and invisible worlds that they were able to change the course of action and focus divine virtues upon inferior natures. And according to Plato, the highest form of magic consisted in the divine worship of the gods, plural. And according to Iamblichus, the priests, through sacerdotal theurgy, were able to ascend from a material state of unconsciousness to a realization of the universal essence, thus coming to an understanding of universal purpose, by which the performance of high feats of magic became possible. Thousands of years later, Aleister Crowley claimed the same thing. Now, this is significant. It's proper at this point to establish a clear line of demarcation between magic and sorcery. You see, the term magic was not associated with occult jugglery by the Egyptians, but arose from a profound understanding of natural law. Magic, says General Albert Pike, is the exact and absolute science of nature and its laws. Unquote. From the knowledge of this absolute science arises occult science. Occult merely means hidden, folks. From experience in occult science, in turn, arises the theurgic art. For as surely as man has adapted his physical universe to his purposes, so surely the adept of the mystery school adapts the metaphysical universe to his purposes. To acknowledge that the Egyptians possessed the power of adapting mystical forces to physical ends is to bestow upon them proficiency in the most perfect and difficult of the arts, according to the mystery religion of Babylon. Yet to deny this ability on the part of the Egyptian priests is to deny the evident, and we must resign ourselves to the undeniable fact that they possess a form of learning which has not been conferred upon this present race, at least publicly. Men like Aleister Crowley have proven that it has been passed down through the ages and is kept and practiced secretly by those who call themselves the guardians of the secrets of the ages.
Another problem that arises in connection with the pyramid project is something that is coming along now, namely that the pyramid was some kind of a vibratory structure, radiating energy and having some strange virtue in itself, and that meditation upon the pyramidal shape produces certain changes in the human consciousness. The particular shape, angle, and tip of the pyramid, its proportions and so forth, having very definite significance. Now, this point is not original now. It is referred to in very ancient times, for it was believed and taught that in Egypt, that as earlier than Pythagoras of Samos, that is the 6th century BC, the Egyptians represented their deities by symmetrical geometric solids, and that in the temples, the 5 perfect solids were used to represent the principal deities, that each of them with a different shape, a different proportion, and a different arrangement represented one of the deities, and that, most important of all, the contemplation of these forms had meaning, that the contemplation of the symmetric solids could heal disease, could expand consciousness, could relieve the mind of distress, and could calm the emotions. Each of these forms, then, was, in a sense, therapeutic, because perfect harmony is always therapeutic. And probably the most perfect structure that antiquity knew was the pyramid. The pyramid had several advantages. First of all, it was simple. It had no details. It had no structural peculiarities that would distort or clutter up the fine mathematical proportion. It was a perfect example of geometry. It was in all its parts balanced, orderly, methodical. It was exactly what it appeared to be, and it was in all ways suitable for the sacred purpose for which it was intended. But in any event, this ritual was the story of the soul's journey into the afterlife, and was a very complicated story in the Egyptian mythology. But it all was condensed into a fraction of its original length in a ritual performed by the Egyptian priests. Breasted told me that he was perfectly aware that it was a ritual when he translated these papyri. And this ritual was the ritual of coming forth by day. Those who die the ordinary death go forth by night, according to the Egyptians, and they wander in a kind of darkness, of uncertainty. They wander through a universe that is benign, wonderful, loving, but like an infant, they have no memory or no conscious thought of where they're going. So those of that type who just simply die as they have lived, asleep as to reality, who have never improved themselves by any conscious effort. These are the little ones. They're not evil. They're not doomed for perdition. Their mistakes will not prevent them from growing. But they are still unable to come forth by day, which means they cannot come forth consciously. They cannot come forth lighted by their own inner light. So they are the ones who must wait.